Hello, folks. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nicole Trevino Flores, and I am the Global Ed Coordinator for Southeast Community College. And that is about all you're going to get from me today, because clearly I'm not in any place to be a moderator today. So I'm going to turn it over to Phip Ross, who will be moderating again today for our last Lunch and Learn of the year. And I want to thank you to our guests and for our entire audience for being here. And go ahead and leave your cameras off so we can keep our focus on our presenters. And we'll save some time at the end for questions, but we will conclude sharply at 12:45. Thank you. Go ahead, Phip.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Nicole. And thank you to our guests and for everybody for joining us for this conversation. It's set up to be an informal discussion. And our guests come from, I believe, will provide some better introduction than this, from Doane University. Let's see, that is Victor, correct? Victor, you're at University of Wesleyan right now.
Yeah, University.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Victor Hansen, Dr. Victor Hansen, economics professor at Wesleyan, and Dr. Ole Kalimanchuk. How'd I do? Thank you.
Great.
Who is at University of Nebraska, the professor, I have to mention the professor, Susan J. Rosowski professor, who used to be my neighbor and one of my first graduate professors in the English department a number of years ago. Lovely woman. So I'm happy you have that position. She's was an amazing person. So I do have some basic, I would like to just invite our speakers, perhaps, Ole, if you would like to introduce yourself. And I think if you would like to share a little bit about your biographies and your experience and some with Ukraine, your cultural connection to that place and culture, would be welcome as an introductory start to introduce everybody here to yourselves, please, if you would.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Phip. So my name is Ole Kalimanchuk, and I'm a professor of biochemistry here at UNL. I'm also director of the Nebraska Redox Biology Center. And my connection to Ukraine is I was actually born there. I was born in West Ukrainian city of Lviv, that you might have heard about in the news quite a bit, because this is where a lot of journalist pools been stationed and embassies relocated to, and so on. This is a westernmost city. It's about 30 miles away from Polish border, and I lived there till my early teens, and then my family immigrated to Germany, and then I actually got educated in Germany, and then we moved to Utah. So I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, for a number of years. So as I was saying, off record, I think so. I left Ukraine a long time ago, probably close to 25 years ago. And but I'm still maintaining connections, and I still have family there, also mostly in Lviv City region. And we, of course, we've been extremely worried about recent chain of events and what was going on, and keeping in touch with the families pretty regularly. Yep.
Thank you. Do you have any, can I press you? I think folks are probably, when I looked up the size of Ukraine, it's a little bit smaller than the state of Texas, which surprised me. And it's a huge ag exporter in the world, and the impacts here will be, if they're not already being felt. Do you have any thoughts about, thoughts about the culture, specifically any cultural background when you've gone back to visit, about the people of Ukraine? Yeah.
So again, my roots there in the Western Ukraine, which is really a melting pot for different nations. And, if I were to do like Ancestry.com test, I mean, that'd come up as, maybe third Pole, third Jew, maybe Austrian or something like that. So, and then it's just the part that's used to be part of Austrian Empire first, and Poland, and then it's until up 1939, and then it's got basically annexed by the Soviet Union and became part of the Western Ukraine. So of course, historically, this is people there. I mean, they're really, I'd say intertwined and so on. And they also there's a lot of tradition that's kind of intermixed between different nations, and that's what makes that part a little bit different than the rest of the country. But that being said, I mean, they're extremely patriotic people there. They are very friendly and a great hosts, basically. So that's for sure.
Victor, would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Victor Hansen. I am assistant professor of economics at Nebraska Wesleyan University. I grew up in Ukraine and actually got my bachelor's and master's degree in Ukraine. So I moved to United States in 2005 to start my graduate studies, my second master's degree then in economics at UNL. So I've been in Lincoln actually for quite a while now. Like it almost feels like, a few more years and I will probably have lived in Lincoln as about as long as I will have lived in Ukraine before I moved here. Yeah, my family is back in Ukraine. I'm from South. I'm from city of Mykolaiv, which is, and it's also been on the news, sort of, it is right in between Odessa, which is a port city, very probably famous. Those of you who studied World War II history probably heard of Odessa quite a bit. And then another city of Kherson, which is to the east of Mykolaiv, and that city has been currently occupied. We like to think temporarily occupied by the Russian invading forces. Let's see. Yeah, my family is back in Ukraine. I've maintained connection over years, so I usually, the benefit of the academic job is that you have some time off in summer, and so it is a little bit more flexible in terms of visiting. So I try to visit. Before pandemic, I used to go every break basically I had. So it has been extremely. Well, I mean, enraging, I guess, is a word. Just absolutely atrocious what is happening and maddening, and yeah, of course, I worry about my family and as well as my country, because I absolutely do not want to see Ukraine, any part of Ukraine, becoming part of Russia or falling under Russian control. Well, for a number of reasons, of course, there is economic reasons included.
Can you elaborate, press you a little bit? You both have mentioned you still have family there. And could you share if have you been able to maintain communication with most or some, or have heard and what they may be experiencing? And you said, Victor, that it's emotionally enraging, which sounds, it sounds like obviously a very difficult circumstance. What are you hearing from family or other friends that you may be in communication with, and what that's been like to try to sustain that communication right now?
Well, the thing about communication has been actually quite stable over this past month and a half. I can't believe it's been over 50 days now of this craziness, but the communication has been quite stable. At least I can speak for myself and all the friends who are in the United States and all over the world actually, who are from Ukraine, and we all kind of we chat and we maintain. Stay in touch about just that's basically what your day starts with, as you kind of connect with people who connect with your loved ones. Just ask everyone how's everyone doing, and just hope that no one reports any bad news back. And yeah, people, the utility services have been working well in a lot of cities that have been under shelling. So every now and then there's going to be some kind of an issue with electricity, for example, but then, well, at least in my hometown, but the utility services were able to fix those things. So I don't think I've been it's ever been a break in communication longer than just a few hours. So far it's been pretty good. Internet is working, so they're able to connect to the internet. We're able to do video chat. So I actually, just like we are speaking right now, that's basically the mode of communication has been with my family mostly. Speaking about how people are there, well, I guess I've always learned about those things in my field of studies, that there's this adjustment sort of curve where in economics we talks about different shocks. So shocks to economy, there's going to be some event, unexpected event, and then the initial impact is going to be big, but then over time, as people adjust to it, sort of it's mitigated. And it's been unfortunate that the circumstances are such as they are, that I observe this sort of but that's exactly what has been happening. It seems like at the beginning it's been tremendous shock. It's been a shock for everyone here as well. So I couldn't sleep the first night. I mean, I'm sure everyone could share similar stories where you just kind of you sleep next to your phone is on, it's full sound, just want to make sure every message that was coming through, you just check and see, what is it? Is it from just some news? Is it from family member? Is it from a friend? What is it? A lot of uncertainty, a lot of misunderstanding of what was going on exactly, what to expect, what things like that. But I think week 3 is when they are not stable in a sense of the situation, but I think they were more stable in a sense of understanding what to expect, at least a little bit further ahead. So people, I can say that calm down is probably not the right term here, but at least some of my friends, so the communication just became more about, okay, so we are in this situation. What can we do next? What can we do? How can we help? Who needs help? How can we, if somebody needs to move, do we need to move? Do we need to evacuate? So the conversation became less emotional and more, to the point. Okay, what can we do? And then eventually, I've seen some of my friends started posting that they finally make it to, I don't know, to get a haircut or to get, manicure, to just little joys in life that people really want to return back to any sense, sort of something that resembles normality. A friend of mine yesterday posted that she went for a jog, and then she kind of made a joke about it on Instagram. She was just, one of those stories. She's like, well, that's how sports is these days. You just catch a jog between the air raid sirens. And so I think I know friends in Kiev. Kiev has been returning more so to normal life than many other cities, just because of the retreat of the forces. But the danger of strikes are still high. So they still have to be careful, and they still have to be very cognizant and aware of that when they leave their houses. But at least restaurants are reopening. Well, people also need to go back to work. People need to, return back to some kind of income situation so that they can maintain their families and support their families, their loved ones. So that's basically what I see, is that there's been kind of some shift, at least, towards, away from panic and towards some stability, some acceptance that this is just the new normal, and we have to adjust to it. And we, as human beings, we need to figure out how to, not be destroyed by it, how to, endure, how to move on. So that's what I see.
Ole, do you have something to add, contrast, support?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of nice because you have speakers basically who are representing different parts of the country, which is great. So, I mean, Lviv has been kind of a safe haven for a while now, because it's further west, and I mean, the city got some missile strikes too. So don't get me wrong, it's you can clearly tell the war is there. But it's been more probably, I think, a little less intense than Mykolaiv, for example. So to back this up a little bit, so my mom still lives there, so she likes living in Ukraine, obviously, and also my wife's family. And they, just like Victor was saying, I mean, this is a routine. So to me, I was always wondering, reading the books about the World War II, how people were maintaining daily routines in London when it's been bombed by Nazis, right? It's the same thing, basically. Now I understand better because they just moving. I mean, they keep going on. They keep plugging away, doing things, trying to maintain their routines. And at the same time, there was a missile strike on the basically, I think it's an oil refinery or oil storage facility. And this is just 2 miles from the place where my mom lives. So it's pretty crazy. But at the same time, I think the word I would describe this with, it's numbing. I mean, people just getting more numb towards these stresses. They just keep it. And I guess living the life is the way to cope with these insults and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's strange to say almost normalizing even folks that are just watching this from the outside, like many of us are, just a mediated, we follow the news, right? But you are connected more closely, obviously, to what is happening there. But I worry about the normalizing and kind of the numbing of also people that might start. I don't know if we can ignore this or get because the potential effects here that are in the balance is just not a country's independence, right? We're talking geopolitical, economic, or worse, some nuclear, obviously, contingencies involved here.
Yep.
But the numbness is a concern as this goes on, and while it even which suggests some things are just staying the same, but the scorched, it seems like we have Vladimir Putin's in a place where he has to go all in now, and that's my concern. The scorched earth approach, dare I say that term, not at all flippantly, that the world turns its eyes away. How important is it for us to stay engaged with this, U.S. citizens in general? And I think Zelensky, I was a different question, but maybe it fits here. How important is he, do you think, in keeping, I think he's done pretty amazing. What's your assessment of the president in this role? He's kind of become obviously an international celebrity over this unfortunate incident. So I've taken the mic way too long there. Did I elicit, get a question across there, something to respond to? Victor, would you like to have it back?
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to, I saw there was a joke several weeks ago. I can't remember, but I think it was an Instagram post someone posted, and I think it was quoted, Bill Maher was quoted on it and said that, finally, United States has a president that's loved by everyone across the political spectrum, and, that president of Ukraine. So that was the joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I think the moment, I guess people need to understand a little bit of the background. Ukraine is a post-Soviet country. We have, the corruption is not something that we're not familiar with. Well, I guess too many negatives in one sentence. Let's put it this way: corruption is something that we're very well familiar with, and this, and we recognize that. So definitely, this is something that's we've done a lot of reforms over the past years, and there is definitely more to do. But there's also, partly because of that, there's also has been kind of a low level of trust amongst the population for the government. So that's kind of one problematic area that we had. But I think the moment that President Zelensky announced that he is staying in Kiev and that he is not moving out, because I think, some people expressed this opinion that they were expecting that he's just gonna, I'm sure there's even been, talks, in various places on the internet, various social platforms where people were speculating that he's actually not in Kiev really, but he is, recording his messages from an embassy somewhere outside of Ukraine, or maybe he is in Poland, or maybe somewhere else. But so what he started doing is just going outside of the parliament building and then in center of Kiev and recording his messages to people of Ukraine every day, so that we could see where he is actually located, so that people couldn't speculate about anything. And I think the moment he declared that he is staying, I think that united people a lot across political spectrum, and this was a very important move on his part. And I think I'm pretty sure that it contributed a lot to the situation, the dire fight that people put from the very beginning of this war. I think he did a great job, and he's doing a great job, and I have confidence he will be doing a great job. It must be a really tough place. I mean, I don't think he realized that or ever thought. Of course, I can't speak for himself, but I'm just, I think no one, to the last moment when there were airstrikes on the 24th of February, that morning in Ukraine, it was 5 a.m. I think between 4 and 5 a.m. In Ukraine, it was still 23rd of February here. I was preparing for classes for the next day, and then I got the message, and many people that day got the same message. It began. So, and that's the hardest message that we were afraid of to receive, that no one believed that it's going to go to that extent, even though we heard a lot of warning signs from the West, United States, Germany, and so forth, European Union. But I don't think people really believe that this is going to go this far, and until the last moment. And so I'm pretty sure that he never thought that he would have to be the war president of Ukraine, and it's and I completely, I applaud his courage, and I applaud what he is doing, how he's handling the situation. As far as the second part of your question, what kind of consequences this has for the world, and I mean, they will already see them. So I mean, economic consequences are probably the most obvious. Inflation that was caused by disruption of the trade in oil and gas, of course, sanctions, even though Russia's trade with the United States is extremely limited, so it's a very small percentage. But Russia is the largest exporter of oil and gas in the world. So as a result, of course, the rechanneling of this trade and cutting Russia off of the world markets will have inflationary effects, and we see them. The one thing, as an economist, I if one would ask me to make a forecast, I would say that just like with that thesis that I mentioned before, economy doesn't exist where there are no humans. So the economic laws are basically the laws of human behavior, right? So and just like people adjust to any kind of shock, the world economy is going to adjust to this shock as well. So we will figure out other ways, other suppliers, other channels, and eventually this situation is going to be fixed, and the inflation will stop. So that we call it supply, cost inflation. So that is eventually going to run its energy, and then it'll subside. So I know some people are concerned about that with the increased oil prices and gas prices in the United States, but this is a very temporary thing. We do need to keep in mind that the price went up right before summer, and usually prices for gas do go up during summer months because people drive more in summer. That's just because of that. So it's just a demand factor. So the prices for gas will probably hover, they'll go down, but not as much as back to their February mark. So we're probably not going to see a $2 gas again in Nebraska over this summer. But it's not because of the problems with, or not because of the war, but it's going to be the play of other factors. It's just the demand factors for the summer demand effects, basically. So what we're going to see is probably not a huge decline, not a drop back to 250 that we saw in January, but just a drop back to normal summer price levels. So, and I think a bigger question is, Ukraine is the 7th largest exporter of wheat. Wheat is an important commodity around the world, and many nations do not grow enough for their, to provide the food security in their countries. Egypt, for example, countries in the Middle East, a lot of them import food, agricultural commodities. So the disruption in the wheat market is going to probably be the one most most obvious, most apparent this summer. And so this is a problem, additional problem for the for the world economy to sort out. So I know that some countries, I read that Egypt already put a ban on any exports of wheat this summer, so they will not, or as they're introducing restrictions so that because of the higher prices, so that if there is any grain in the country, people were not tempted or incentivized to export it and sell at higher world prices. So that could lead to shortages, and these are the serious consequences that I know that are being discussed, and something to watch for, and world leaders will have to sort out this summer. In terms of political impact,
Victor, let me interrupt you.
Sorry.
Just as a moment there. Ole, can you, if you've got a response, I want to be sure. I know that we just have a handful of minutes left here, and I want to be sure.
Yeah, sorry, I switched.
No problem.
Into my lecture mode.
Appreciate it. No.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm biochemist. I'm no economist, so obviously I'm sure Victor knows more about this than I do. I would just add that people project that. I mean, again, wheat shortages probably would not going to affect the U.S. that much, but it's going to have a pretty severe knock-on effect on Middle East and Africa, and that might have some lingering consequences. That's based on the analytics I've been reading.
Okay, but can we shift a little bit here to both of you mentioned family or friends in the country. We know that immigration is happening. I think more than 1 million Ukrainians have left the country. Am I correct on that? And potentially many more are facing that decision. Do you have some concerns or thoughts related to immigration policy in the United States, or anything on that topic more broadly? Even immigration in the U.S. is a pretty controversial topic. Our borders. Ole, do you have a thought there about what?
I might. So a little backup here. So I've been running an initiative here at UNL, and now it's being backed up by several other, higher ups and Office of Chancellor and whatnot. So we are trying to bring here some Ukrainian biochemists or scientists more broadly that are refugees, right? So my lab, actually, I started this whole thing because we had some surplus of research money. We said, I'd be willing to, provide some stipends for at least either short or long term for people to come and work in my lab and other labs in the department. And it's been great. It's actually got pretty good traction. So it's been advertised. So I think KETV did a piece on that, Journal Star, Omaha World Herald, and so on. It was great, but I got very few inquiries, and part of the reason was because those that I did get, they were saying, it's extremely difficult to get to where you are. So, and we've been lagging dramatically compared to many other countries, even not just European countries, but Canada, for example. I mean, they already admitted a lot of Ukrainian refugees. In the U.S. has been really, we actually tried doing this. We tried calling Deb Fisher's office, Dan Sass's office, and they say, you know what, we don't know what to do about this. There's no like clear, roadmap how to process these things. We're still trying to figure it out. So, and this was kind of disappointing. That's all I can I have to say about this. And we're still kind of working on these things, but it hasn't been resolved, or far from being resolved.
Well, it's a crisis that we're seeing unfold here, the immigration, the exodus of Ukrainians to safe havens. Some neighboring countries have stepped up, and just something to watch. Elijah has a question here. How is morale holding up in the Ukrainian public's outlook for how the war will go? Either one of you like to take similar to that, related to that question, I think, in terms of morale, is this idea that Ukrainians are warriors. They are, and you've mentioned the pride in the country. And I've seen teachers load women, females, civilians grab what looks to be automatic rifles and jump into the fray, what appears to be, and it's inspiring. How long can that morale, what we've been shown anyway, it's been storied as a pretty amazing morale, and how long that can hold up. It's been an amazing phenomenon, the warrior Ukrainian spirit as exhibited by the president. But if you have a thought about the morale and how folks are going to sustain themselves.
Well, maybe I'll start and then let Victor to take over.
Yeah.
So, to put it in perspective, so I mean, most people don't realize how Ukrainians perceive this war. I mean, the best analogy would be Yom Kippur War in Israel in 1973. It's the war for survival. So basically, because people more and more convinced that this is not just about grabbing some land and whatnot. This is really because I mean, you mentioned the scorched land strategy the Russians are using. So this is really, people are really seeing this as a Russians attempt to annihilate Ukraine as a country, as a nation. And of course, this is going to boost the morale a lot because you're fighting for your life, right? And that was one of the main drivers, main factors in this whole thing. And of course, you have to stay motivated. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't know how long that's going to last and if it's sustainable, but that's what people do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting thing is, there's been from the very beginning, I think, and there's been some support for this idea that, the Kremlin expected that this is going to be a very easy, quick thing. So a blitzkrieg where probably bombing will cause chaos and people will massively start, running away from that. And, maybe, then they'll just move in and boom, sort of similar scenario to what happened with the Crimea in 2014 when, Putin is, famously boasted that they didn't have to shoot a single shot, right, to conquer the Crimea. And from I think it almost seemed like chaos lasted for about an hour, and then by that morning of the 24th of February, there were lines to sign up for military duty, and both males and females. The number of people who have emigrated from Ukraine, so refugees, is approximately probably a little bit over 3 million people or something, somewhere between 3 and 4 million people. So Ukraine is a country of over 40 million people. So we're talking about 10%, but this is over the 2-month period, almost a 2-month period. A lot of people who I know just stay where they are. So the the idea is, this is our home. What do you mean? Where are we going to move? You know, because sometimes people don't understand, and a lot of my parents are still in Mykolaiv, and you know, people ask, well, why don't they just move? And then I ask my parents, why don't you just move? And they say, you know, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? You know, this is our home. We're just going to go to a refugee camp. You know, what is the option for us? Because it seems like, well, you know, just move to a European country and then problem solved, right? So you are in safety and then everything is great. But that's not what it is, and that's not how people see it. And they do not want to leave. They want to fight for their land. It's their home, and they're defending their home. And that, you know, a lot of my friends are in Ukraine. They stayed. They didn't move. They may have reallocated away from the areas of active fighting, and then people have returned back. I mean, when Kyiv was liberated just you know, several weeks ago, there was about the same situation on the highway to Kyiv as there was out of Kyiv when it all started. So there was just a caravan of cars moving back. So people were coming back. They just want to move back to their homes, because a home is a home. It is that's where they want to be. So I think Oleg said very eloquently and sort of put it very nicely that exactly this is the war for survival. This is the fight for the right to exist, the right to stay in their homes. And I don't see any decline in the morale, at least with the friends that I talk to. So people, and every now and then, I mean, it's just like every human being. Sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes you are happy, sometimes you're a little sad. And so people get tired every now and then, but then they bounce back. And I haven't heard anyone saying, you know, this is what, you know, there's no what if scenarios, people and what people say. There's always when. So when this war is over, when we have the victory, that's how people talk. You know, when I will not plan for postpone things till tomorrow, when this is over, when we win. So most people probably, it wouldn't be exaggeration to say that most people believe that way, that this is going to be a victory for Ukraine. And then they're already making plans about how we're going to rebuild, how we're going to restore, how we're going to. The immigration problem is actually concerning from economic standpoint, because, you know, if you think about it, people is one of the most important resources for the economy. So what we call human capital. And a lot of those people who moved out, the longer it keeps going, the longer they cannot return back, the more they get used to where they are. And then the higher the probability that some of them will not return back. And that could create some issues for Ukraine. So I envision that we'll have to come up with policies eventually to help people relocate back, to help people return back to their homes, and provide incentives for them, especially for the younger generation, to come back. But this is one of the big problems. I've heard there's been some propaganda messaging going on around that, well, Ukraine only needs 11 million people at the current level of GDP for it to be a developed country or high income country. And then the big, you know, the logical, the pitfall there is that, well, you remove the people, you remove the GDP. People are the ones who produce the GDP. It's not just made somewhere on a factory and then here the Ukrainians who somehow consume that. So, you know, people is an important resource in creating the wealth of the nation. And so that's something, that's an economic problem that will have to be addressed here shortly.
We are winding up here with just a couple minutes, and we're I do have in terms of this, we cannot, Oleg, I don't want to stop you from responding to anything Victor is saying there, but you know, I am curious. A common question that I have personally is about related to the spirit and hope that folks will rebuild. And I'm curious about, you know, there's a long religious, as I understand, tradition in Ukraine. It's got the fourth largest world's population of Eastern Orthodox believers, I believe, and it's there's other faiths in Ukraine, of course. And I wonder if you have any comment about the role or lack of role of religion in modern day Ukraine in supporting, or maybe it's not being leaned on by people. What do you have any thoughts there?
Oops. Okay. I'll probably start and then I'll be jumping off because it's my time's almost up here. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Are we froze? What's going on?
I think just
Okay. Pip?
I think
Are you
just
there?
Pip is off. I think it's just Pip that's off, but
Okay,
please,
okay,
please
great.
go ahead.
Yeah, so, well, what I would say, so Western Ukraine is actually Catholic or so-called Greek Catholic. So these are Catholics of Eastern Rite. So it's and it's been traditionally very religious. And I think that's been sort of part of strategy to preserve the national identity and everything. And that's what helped, Western Ukrainians in particular to survive the Soviet times, because I mean, as I was mentioning before, so Western Ukraine has been joined forcefully, joined is the Soviet Union, Soviet Ukraine, in essentially before the World War II, and then they were resisting up until the late 50s. And that was the part of coping again and surviving, preserving the identity. So, and I think this has been a huge thing. I mean, I can't speak much about the Orthodox part, of course, but maybe Victor will take that part. Yeah.
Yeah, Ukraine is, even though Orthodox tradition is, I guess, by the number of people, is probably the largest in terms of representatives, but also, I mean, Ukraine is at this point, I would say that they're representatives of all kinds of beliefs, and it almost feels like a melting pot in this sense. But I think a lot of people feel relationship with the religious tradition more so culturally, in a way. So, but that connection, is very strong. I mean, celebrating. So even people who are not, even people, I think Oleg is saying that he needs to go. Sorry, I didn't want to. Thank you so much for joining, and
Thank you, Oleg.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So I mean, it just, I'm trying to shape it on the right terms. So it's the Orthodox Church, Orthodox tradition is a little different, I guess, from what I see here in Lincoln. So I mean, a lot of people do not necessarily go to church every Sunday, or they celebrate major religious holidays. They believe that they are, if you ask them, what faith are you, and then they'll say Orthodox Christian. But a lot of people are so culturally rather than religious in our in understanding that we have here. So some people would wear, let's say, a little crucifix, right, on a chain, but they may not go to church. So they feel the connection to the tradition, but not necessarily, they go to church or pray. So it is an interesting, so religion has an interesting place. I think some people are religious in just the traditional sense, or as we understand it here, and some are not so at all. So there is also people who identify as non-religious, atheists. But in Ukraine, I think probably this theme may have helped and united people to an extent, but I don't think that, I don't know. I can't say that it played a very important role. So this is something that united everyone, because there's so many different nationalities, and there's so many different religious backgrounds. So many people consider themselves to be Ukrainians, even though they come from various ethnic backgrounds. So, let's say a neighboring town of Odessa, city of Odessa, neighboring to my hometown, there's a large Jewish population. And right from the beginning of the war, I remember one of my friends who is Jewish sent me a message saying that, okay, the synagogue in your hometown is helping people, is helping evacuate people. So you don't have to be Jewish, you just have to, here's the phone number, just call, give them your information, and they'll help you out. So just an example. So it really doesn't matter in this situation. I guess that's the right way to put it. It doesn't matter what faith you are. I think people of all faiths and all cultural backgrounds who were stuck in this, who were taken by surprise by the situation, they all kind of united and they're helping.
Thank you, Victor. As we wrap up here, you've been translating a woman's diary every day or a couple times a week since she's been writing that the day the war began, I believe, and posting those on Facebook. There's a Nebraska Public Media story that we can share along with the recording to folks to that story. Is that ongoing? Are you still doing that?
Yes, on and off. She's my Japanese instructor. So I've been, for fun, just taking Japanese classes for 5 years now. And she's someone I actually went to the same university as I did, but years later. So we reconnected through a common friend. And she started writing those. She writes them in Ukrainian, but the translator doesn't do a great job. Sometimes you can be lost in translation there. So I was just correcting those translations and posting them so that her friends around the world could read them. But yeah, she keeps writing them every day, and it's a war chronicle, and it was day 58, I believe, yesterday that I saw. And so I read them. She describes, her husband. She and her husband stayed in the subway station because that's what was a safe place to be, and they lived there basically. So they stayed. Now they finally they were able to relocate back home. So they're in Kyiv, and our last few lessons already. So we keep doing it. We kept reconnecting even when she was there in the subway station. So we kept doing our hour of Japanese twice a week, and I did some do some exercises and things like that, chat. Because exactly of people needed to restore some sense of normal life, and that was normal before that. So it was also part of she requested and said, hey, can we just go back to that, and we just did that. We just had our lessons, and for that one lesson, for that 1 hour, we just forgot about everything that's outside of it. It's kind of like a place to escape. But she's back to their apartment, and she is now giving lessons the way that she did before in her office with a computer. And so
great project, and I think those stories are important to read. And thank you for your role in bringing that story to English readers. And thank you today for joining us. Perhaps Nicole can share that work, link to that story. Thank you so much, Victor, for taking the time to talk with us today. And thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you for organizing this, and I greatly appreciate that so many people join, and so many people, so many people in Nebraska. We all feel the love. This has been amazing, not just around the world, but even, every little thing, every time someone posted something on their Facebook saying, I stand with Ukraine or something like that, or even said to one person they know from Ukraine who has connection to Ukraine, or donated $5 somewhere. All of these things helped immensely. And I just would like to say, thank you so much. Thank you so much for organizing information sessions like this. All of this is extremely important and is very helpful.
Thank you. And in the chat.
Oops.
Looks like he's frozen again. Thank you so much. I hope you'll take a second to read the chat. You've gotten a lot of appreciation. We truly appreciate you sharing your time and your story. I think that's the important part, was to bring a personal tie to that.
Absolutely.
Did you want to add anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Victor. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.